Hello, my name is Doug Leisure, and I am recording this video to give you a demonstration of my expense tracking portion of my donation software. And this will be for the new version that I'm releasing in 2026. I've created a separate video showing the donation portion of the software. This one will be focused specifically on the expense tracking. Just a little bit of history. It's been a little more than 10 years ago that I created the donation software for our little church here in Western Pennsylvania. At our church, our treasurer uses QuickBooks, so we only had a need for tracking donations and making the year-end donor receipts. But it worked so well for our church that I started sharing it with other churches, made some videos, and I've had lots of people from other countries all around the world see my videos and request a copy of my software. And to date, I've given it to more than 1,600 churches in more than 30 different countries. Regarding the expense tracking portion, a little more than 5 years ago, one of the churches contacted me and said, "Hey Doug, I love your donation tracking portion. It's working really well, but we're a really small church, and so I actually do everything related to the church finances, and I need some help to track the expenses. Can you please make something for me? Just make it work kind of like my checkbook. So I will enter into your software rather than writing in the checkbook, and please help me to be able to present some information to our leadership that shows our deposits and our payments and basically how we're doing year to date. So like a income versus expense type of report." So I added that functionality, and over the years have continued to enhance the functionality for tracking expenses. And so today we'll be looking at the new version for 2026. Okay, before we dive into it very deeply, let's just take a quick look at some of the features of the expense tracking. And this is coming from my website. I will put a link in the description for this website, as well as a link to the donation demonstration video. In case you haven't seen that, you'll definitely want to see that. But let's take a look at, I'm going to review some of the features, and then we'll go deeper dive into the software. So one of the things is the entry is done in a very familiar check register format. So the deposits, you can type them in manually, or the better way I think to do it is to let the software, the donation software, write the entries for your donation deposits for you automatically, and so the software allows that to happen. So if you're letting the deposits be made through the software, then all you need to add are the payments or the checks that you write. Okay, the other thing is when you're entering your expenses, you can track them by category and subcategory. A great example of that is would be the utilities. So that as we're writing our checks, we have our payment to our electricity, gas, rent, telephone, water, but we can categorize those at a higher level because they're all utility expenses. So that allows us to see in total what it costs for the utilities for the church or the nonprofit organization, and then also in detail for the specific electricity, gas, rent, those specific utility expenses. So the idea of the category, subcategory is a great way to do it, and I allow you to create your own list of those categories with the related subcategories, and you build your list here on this little drop down tab, and that makes them available through a drop down. So using the drop down, you can choose utility. Once you choose utility, then underneath of that you'd be seeing then your subcategories. So using the drop down methodology allows us to be very consistent with the way we do the entry, and you also then you don't have to type these things in, you just select them off the drop down list. In the early days, we presumed that churches had a checking account, and that was the only account they really had, and so it was designed with that single checking account register type of entry. But as I continue to work with more and more churches and nonprofit organizations, I find that you have multiple accounts that you have to track. So within the register methodology, we also then allow you to select between your different accounts. So the register actually is used then to show income or expense going into or out of those different accounts. And we allow you to track up to 10 different accounts, and we will the software will calculate your current balance. You give it the starting balance for the year, and it'll add up all the deposits, the payments, and calculate current balance. So it allows us to not only have up to 10 different accounts, but to then report on the current balance for those accounts. And then the last thing, and that's over here where we have another tab where we do all of that, the balance information, and this is our report on the account balances. And then the last thing then is we have some comprehensive financial reports that show the income versus expense. And so basically it's just the idea that we are entering our deposits as positive numbers, all of our expenses or our payments as negative numbers. And again, we have that category, subcategory breakdown that helps us to understand how we are spending our money. And so then this will calculate for us our net by month and also year to date. And this is just using a standard Excel pivot table to accomplish that. All right, let's dive in a little bit further and take a look at the expense register. Okay, so as I said, it's set up like a checking account register where the deposits are entered, and again you have the option to do that automatically. Now within the software, I've given you lots of parameters is what I call them, the way that you adjust the software to work according to the way you need it to. And so if we look at the parameters, one of the first things you'll want to make sure is that you turn on the option to say, hey, I want to do donations and expenses. And that way allows you to track the expenses as well as the donations. And now it's just a little drop-down drop-down item. So select donations and expenses. The other thing then is we scroll down here, we have a portion of it where we can identify the names of our different accounts that we want to track and tell the software how many of those we're using. And then we have about 40 different parameters here that you can use to adjust how the expenses and the balances portion of the software works. One of the important things would be to say in this particular parameter, when we are copying the donations from the software automatically, what account do we put it into? So for most of you, it'll go directly into when you take the deposit to the bank, it'll go into your checking account. From there, you can use out of the checking account, you can write a check to make the payment against your credit card, right, or maybe an electronic transfer over into PayPal or into Venmo. Maybe you'll take some cash out of your checking account for your petty cash fund. But that's how most churches do it, is they deposit into one account, and that's what you identify here. Now, if you do have a situation, and I know I've talked with a couple of you that have that situation where when you take the money to the bank, you actually deposit it into more than one account. And let's jump back here to the entry tab. And so one of the examples that I know I ran into recently would be donations to the missions. So most things go into the checking account, but they had a separate savings account for missions. And so during the deposit, they actually separated the money and deposited directly into missions. I allow you to accommodate that kind of a methodology. And if you just scroll down here towards where we have to the part where we have our totals, scroll over to the right, and this is where we actually identify what account the deposit is going into. So in their case, they wanted the missions to go directly to not the checking account, but to the missions account. And so that's easily accomplished. Just simply you have to unprotect the sheets, or allowed to make a change to it. Do an equal sign, go over to our parameters, down to our accounts, and then just select the missions account. If I had it down here, we'd be able to select it. Okay, and that then changes all deposits from this point forward. When you deposit the missions, it gets deposited into the missions account. So okay, let me just undo that and reprotect the sheet so we don't accidentally make any other changes there. But just the idea that you can control that pretty easily if you have that situation. All right, back to our parameters for a second. And one of the other things to consider would be when the donations are made. My fault. Sorry, what we're trying to refer to are the concept of do you want that category, subcategory methodology? I think that's the best way to use the software, but there are some that only want to use categories and just eliminate subcategories. That is an option within the software, and you would just select that here. Where the expenses use subcategories and additions, you say yes. If you only want to use categories only, just set that to no. All right, within the check register, the expense portion, there are some optional columns here. One of them is related to the payee. So when we are writing a check, it's very important that we identify the category and subcategory. Now, in the case of the employee category, we would have a subcategory for the pastor's salary, another subcategory for the let's say for the secretary salary, the janitor's salary, that kind of an idea. So the subcategory itself might be sufficient, and therefore you may not need to actually write the person's name here as the payee. That's why it's an optional field. But let's take a look at another example here. Okay, here we went to the Food Lion, a grocery store, and we bought some groceries, and we then identified the category and the subcategory, which is great. But if you think of it from the perspective of the fact that we used our credit card to do this, and when it gets around to trying to balance my credit card, on the credit card statement, I see that on the 24th of April I spent $100 to the Food Lion. If I don't have the payee listed here, then trying to reconcile the credit card statement becomes a little more problematic, because here I would, if I'm listing the category and subcategory, I lose track of the fact that it was spent at the Food Lion. So I think it's an important option to have that payee feature here. But it is an option, so you can turn it on or turn it off. The other thing that is optional is whether or not your church or your nonprofit is doing in-kind donations. Some people use the term non-cash donations. And so if you do in-kind donations, then you want to set that parameter, and in which case the donations for the in-kind will be displayed. The amounts will be displayed here in this in-kind column here. So again, those are some of the optional things. Some of the other optional things is this column where you can identify missing items. So at the time we are ready to balance or reconcile our checking account statement that we just got from the bank. All right, it might be that certain deposits or payments aren't showing up on the bank statement. That's actually fairly common. It's a timing thing. It's not an issue. It's not a problem. They'll show up next month. They're just not there at during the time that the bank made the statement and sent it to us. So we have this optional column here where you can identify those things that are missing on your statement. All right. So if we know that the check here to the pastor, we wrote it, he just hasn't cashed it yet, so therefore it didn't show up on the bank statement. So we can mark that as yes, it is missing on the bank statement. And what that does for us is it helps us with the balances. So here's our opening balance for the checking account. It tracks the deposits, the payments, and calculates the current balance. However, this balance doesn't match my bank statement because of that missing check that wasn't on the bank statement. So by just checking, using that column to identify those missing things, it will then calculate the balance that should match your bank statement. There's one other optional column there. I don't know how often it's used, but let me just unhide that. And it's one so that you can optionally say whether or not for any of the expenses, did the person who spent the money, did they actually also provide a receipt for those expenses? So if you let's say in this case, we gave the credit card to one of our church leadership, and they went to the grocery store and bought the items and delivered it to the person who needed it. And when they returned, they gave us the receipt, and so you can mark on there, yes, I have a receipt. Now this doesn't really go anywhere. It's just really for your information, to help you with tracking. Do I have all the receipts that I need? Do I need to go back and ask somebody for the receipts because I never got them? It's just an optional field for you. Okay, let's dig a little bit deeper. So as you are entering your expenses, we talked about entering. As you're entering it, you select from the drop down, you select the account that the deposit or the payment deposit is going into, payment is coming out of it. You can type in the check number, you can type in the word deposit. If you use like a debit card, you might put the word debit card in here. If you use the credit card, you might put the name of the credit card in here. So this is where you identify kind of how you spent the money. Credit card, debit card, uh, um, Venmo, Cash App, Zelle, those kinds of things. You can enter all of those here. Very important that you enter the date. We talked about the payee and how that can be extremely helpful to enter that. And then the categories, and you select from the drop down your categories. Well, let's drop down here and do a brand new one. So let's say we're doing it's going to be out of the account, our credit card, and we're going to say that it's a credit card that you were using. We'll enter the date, about 6/15. The payee, let's say we went to Walmart for this particular item. So from the drop down, you select the item that the category first, and then you select from the category, you select the subcategories that you've created. Let me just again go back here to the drop down and show you how that works. So in the gray area up here is where you enter your categories. Subcategories are simply everything that you list below that. So we have our office supply, we have paper, and if I add here, let's say an ink cartridge. If we have a printer that, and we buy ink cartridges for that, maybe that is our that's our needed subcategory. So you just simply enter it below the office supply category. Whatever you type here in the white cells then will show up as subcategories. And there's our ink cartridge. Okay. And this is designed so that when you select the category, the list of subcategories changes depending on your category. So they're linked together. Oops, sorry. We were saying that was office supply, and it was ink cartridge, and our payment was $45. Okay, so that's how you would do an entry there. I'll just put it back so it's all consistent. Okay, so within within the check register, one of the things I wanted to say is that this check register is what Excel calls a table. That's a special thing within Excel, and Excel tables are supposed to work automatically, so that as you come down and just below the bottom of the table and start doing additional entry, the table automatically extends itself, copying all of the formatting and cell formulas down to it, and it just works automatically. That's the way it's supposed to work. And what I've been finding as I've been working with a lot of you is that Microsoft has, let's just call it hiccups in their software related to this table concept where it automatically extends itself. It doesn't always work correctly. Sometimes the formatting is all wrong. Sometimes the cell formulas are wrong. It doesn't get copied down correctly. So the way I handled that was just simply I have a menu item, and so within the software we have this donation software menu. It's a custom menu that I created inside of Excel. And over here on the right hand side are all the things related to the expenses. And so I have a menu item here that will insert additional rows for the expenses. So it extends or inserts additional rows in this check register. How many does it insert? Well, that's totally up to you. So that we have a parameter here where you just simply tell it how many rows to insert when it's time for you to when you click the menu item, you tell it, hey, I want 5 rows, or hey, I want 20 rows. Just set that parameter accordingly, and then when you click the menu item, it will add that number of rows for you automatically. It will also look at the last date that you entered and just extend that same date down, so that if you're entering lots of things on the same day, then as you insert additional rows, it'll have that same data applied to it. Okay. Now, as we are working with the check register, so as I say, then deposits, if you set it up correctly, they will automatically come over from the donation software. All of your deposits based on your donations. Now you might still have other things, other income. Let's say how about at the very least you might have like interest from the bank, or maybe there are other things that you do that aren't deposits, but they still are money makers for you. And so in addition to the donations, you might have other things. Yes, you will need to insert those manually, those deposits, but for the donations themselves, they'll come over automatically. And I mentioned how you can define then the items used in the drop-down list for category and subcategory. What I didn't say is just how easy it is to add additional categories. So what you want to do is just simply insert a new column between F and G. Type in the name of your category. And then whatever items you want to list below here. Okay, and as soon as you enter them here, then they are immediately available on the drop-down. Okay, so creating and managing the category subcategory drop-down is extremely easy to do. Let me just get that one back out of there. Okay. The other small thing you'll notice here is the idea of the transfer, and it is just simply listing all of the accounts that we entered over on the parameters as a transfer. So as you are working with your check register, there will often be a need for transferring money between the different accounts. And let's see if I have any examples of that here. Yeah. Okay, here's a good example. All right, so we need to move money then from PayPal into our checking account. So it's going the other direction, and that makes more sense. Sorry about that. So we are from our checking account, we're going to do a transfer into PayPal, and that from the checking account's perspective is a payment of $150. So that's coming out of the checking account into PayPal, and that is a payment of $150. When you do that, there needs to be a corresponding deposit into PayPal. And so on the next line, we just simply do the other side of that entry. So it's the account is PayPal. It is a deposit from PayPal's perspective. So we select our category of transfer coming from the checking account, and that will be a deposit then into PayPal of $150. Here's the same kind of a thing for the check that we write for our credit card bill. Okay, so our account is checking. That's our check number that we wrote. It's a transfer to Visa, which is our credit card, and that is a payment of $95. And again, now the corollary to that is from Visa's perspective, it's a deposit. So we select transfer, subcategory checking account, and then we enter the deposit, the same amount as our deposit, and that's then how we show the money coming out of the checking account for our credit card bill. So the transfer is a part of the drop down information that's always there, so that's why you just leave that, and then the up to 10 accounts that you're tracking will show up here automatically. All right. Oh, the other thing I didn't say then, on the payee column, that also supports a drop-down list there. And so that drop-down list would be created over here in this column. Just simply start entering all of your drop-down options for the payee right here, and then that will make them available to you through the drop-down list. You also have the option of typing in kind of free form, but the drop-down is a really nice way to handle that. The other thing we have here is the comments column, and so literally you can type just about anything you want to in here, and it could be just a generic comment. It could be some things that you use to help you later on with some customized reporting. One of the examples that we see used quite a bit there would be a way to track special expenses. So let's say as we're getting ready for summer to start up, we're going to do a Vacation Bible School program, and what we'd like to know though is over time, as we're getting ready for everything, how much are we spending on Vacation Bible School, especially when it might come out of multiple different categories, right? So I might spend something at Walmart that I identify as my as an office supply, but even though I bought it as office supply, I'm going to use it for Vacation Bible School, right? Or maybe let's go ahead and do that. Office supply, and we bought some paper, but in this case the paper is going to be used for Vacation Bible School. So I can put VBS in here or some designator, and then we do the same thing where we buy some curriculum, and so that really comes out of our Christian education, but we're taking part of that to use, or we're using that particular purchase for Vacation Bible School. And we'll need some dollars in here to for us to make sense of how this works. Right, so then doing this, that allows us then to go ahead and create our own our own custom worksheet tab here, and in there we could use some simple formulas to then use what we type in the comments column to help summarize what we spent so far on that particular item. So let me just show you an example of that. Okay, so we put in a comment, a title here, VBS spending, and here we create a simple formula to calculate how much we've spent so far. So we'll look in the payment column. We'll sum everything in the payment column, where the comments column equals VBS. And so as we are buying things that are coming out of different categories, subcategories, but they're related to VBS, anytime we type VBS in the comments column, then our cell formula can pick that up and display that for us. So it's just a nice way to add some extra flexibility to how you track things. Okay, the important thing about the expenses then is then the reports that we have that we can utilize. One of the reports is our balance information, and we can print that. It'll calculate the balances automatically. We can print that off the donation software menu item that says print balances report. But basically what you need to do is you need to enter the beginning balance, the opening balance at the beginning of the year, and then mathematically it will calculate all of your deposits, payments, and calculate then your current balance, so your year-to-date balance. And then I showed you that concept of the missing items, missing deposits, missing payments, and it will then adjust that and show us a balance that should match our statement from the bank or the credit card. And then again, you'll do that for all of your accounts, and then you can print this and share it with your leadership. The other report we might want to look at is called the expense report. That's the tab where it's displayed, and this is using a Microsoft Excel pivot table. That's how it's built. So the one thing about the pivot table is that as you make changes to your expense tab, the items that you add here are available to go on the pivot table, but the pivot table does not automatically update itself. That's the one sad thing about pivot tables within Microsoft Excel, is they don't automatically update. You have to tell it, I'm done with my modifications, go refresh or update the entire pivot table now that I'm done. And so I've given you a menu item here, refresh the expense report, and what that's doing is behind the scenes doing that refresh of the pivot table, building again a fresh copy of the pivot table. Okay, so the report itself, we will display our current balances for each of our different accounts, and then we have this pivot table that shows for our current year our income. The income is entered as positive numbers, so these are all of our donations. The subcategory here are the donation categories that we use. All of our special offerings will be listed down here, and then these are the names that we made up for our special offerings. So we can see specials in total, but more specifically those special offering totals. And if you have any additional income outside of your donations, that would be entered here. And again, remember, you have to enter those manually in the expense part of it, those deposits. Because it's a pivot table, it will display our information totaled by month. As you add data, it will add additional months. So right now we have January through June. As I start entering my July data, it'll add a new column automatically. That's what refreshing the pivot table does. It adds additional rows as needed, additional columns as needed. All right, so the income or the deposits are shown as positive numbers. The expenses or the payments are shown as negative numbers, so that so that the software is actually going to calculate for us a net income. I can't change the words because it's an Excel pivot table. I can't change the words here. That's built into the pivot table, this word grand total. But for us, it's not a total, it's a net. And so this is our monthly net, and this is our year-to-date net. Again, the categories and subcategories are shown here, and those are the things that we make up. We select them through the drop down. You add additional items by manipulating this little table here in the drop down tab. All right, let's see, is there anything else that we need to cover? No, I don't think there's anything else at this time. Again, I said I gave you nearly 40 different parameters to help you customize this. I do in my user guide have a portion of the user guide that talks specifically about each one of these different parameters, what they mean and how to use it. What I didn't mention is that we have the option within the software to not only print our balance report and our expense report, or our income versus expense report. Not only your choice is to print it, but I do optionally allow you to say that you would prefer to send that using email, send it as an attached PDF file. And so if you wanted to do that, that would be done here. Yep. How should the expense reports be printed? Yes, sends it to the printer. This selection would create a PDF file that you could send. Within the software, though, you have to turn on the option for emailing here at the higher level. Yes, I want to use the option for emailing receipts and reports. And so once you do that, then you can also say, hey, I want my reports to be emailed automatically from within the software. And the reason it's turned off by default and why you have to select it specifically is on the PC we would be using Microsoft Outlook. That's the only thing we can use to send emails automatically. On a Mac we would be using Apple Mail. And there are some steps you have to go through to get that set up correctly on your PC. Some steps to validate or test that it's working correctly before you can use it. If you do send it through an email, then you get to control then or modify what the subject matter of your email would look like, what the text or the body of the email would look like, as well as entering one or more email addresses for that expense report, and then separately for the balances report. But you can adjust the wording here if you wanted to send it through the email. If you don't have Outlook on your PC or Apple Mail on the Mac, you still have the option to create a PDF file of the report, and then just attach that PDF file to whatever email system you're using. Go ahead and create your own email message, and then attach the PDF file manually. So that would be an option as well. Okay, I think those were the most important things that I wanted to cover. Thank you for the opportunity to show you the expense tracking portion of my software. And again, this is the new version for 2026.